How do the past's greatest buildings measure up in the 21st century?
Famous structures around the world, pored over for centuries by archaeologists and historians. We have never truly been able to uncover all their secrets. But now, scientific breakthroughs have created an amazing new laser technology that can capture and explore these structures in a way no human eye can, for the first time allowing us to understand some of the oldest mysteries of the engineering world. This time, the time scanners are heading to Jerusalem.
Oh, look at that!
Wow.
To discover how the epic builder, King Herod, created one of the largest structures on the planet at the time, and uncover the secrets to how he achieved the remarkable feat of building his own mountain. This is Jerusalem. It's a holy city for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike.
It's a city that's been steeped in thousands of years of history and of politics and of conflict, but it's also the location of some of the most extraordinary structures ever built.
The time scanners are in Jerusalem because it is here that two of the ancient world's building marvels can be found. This is the magnificent Temple Mount. It was the most ambitious building project ever undertaken in the Holy Land. Predating Christ, it was the biggest structure in the Roman world. But what astonishes experts is how it has survived 2,000 years when earthquakes and wars should have ripped it apart. It's a mystery we want to solve.
Could we build that today? It would be a big ask.
And this is the astonishing Herodium, an opulent pleasure palace built on top of a man-made mountain. Standing within the rugged terrain of the West Bank, the ancient builders changed the very landscape when they produced this engineered mountain.
You don't see mountains like that made by men anywhere on Earth.
The time scanners have come here to investigate the mysteries of these buildings and understand the man behind their creation, King Herod the Great, a character renowned in the Bible for murdering children in a search for the baby Jesus. His ruthless ambition drove him to build two of the most impressive engineering feats the world has ever seen. The team wants to find out how he achieved this and discover what secrets lie behind their creation. How has Herod's Temple Mount survived for 2,000 years? What awe-inspiring techniques did he use? And how did his master builders manage to create the man-made mountain of Herodium? Modern science has now given us the technology to answer these questions. Recent breakthroughs mean we now have a device portable enough to travel the world and access these incredible places, and powerful enough to explore deep inside their structural secrets. The mobile laser scanner. It bounces narrow pulses of light off objects to map them with incredible accuracy. What's packed into this tiny box gives our experts virtual superpowers, collecting over 1 billion measurements to form what is known as a point cloud, giving us an incredible 3D perspective, the ability to pick up million-ton structures and move them anywhere, and use this data to take precise measurements with pinpoint accuracy to peel back time and help us unravel mysteries locked in the past. But the real key to the technology is in the interpretation of this data. And we're seeing it through the eyes of one of the world's best structural engineers, Steve Burrows. A master of the modern building world, Steve has created such iconic structures as Beijing's Bird's Nest Stadium, Munich's Allianz Arena, and Manchester's Etihad Stadium.
Whenever I do anything, I want to be proud of the work that I've done, and it's sort of my legacy. And you look here and you say, well, these engineers, they were building a legacy to last forever.
He's always wanted to explore the great engineering mysteries of the past, And now the technology exists to do just that. Steve's leading a laser scanning team on a groundbreaking mission to discover just how good the ancient builders were. How did King Herod create such magnificent, enduring structures?
What we want to find out is how has this ancient site withstood the test of time? If these stones could actually talk, what stories would they tell?
The mission begins in Jerusalem with Herod's most famous creation, the Great Walls of the Temple Mount.
I think the first impression is just the scale of the place. So what we're seeing is 4,000 years of construction all in one place. And it's really hard just to sort of decode it, to sort of imagine where did they start, where was the first stone actually laid on this site.
Thousands of years ago, all that was here was a mountain, the peak of which had been a place of worship and sacrifice for centuries. King Herod decided to build a spectacular new temple on the top of this mountain, on a gigantic platform, which would extend far beyond the mountaintop itself. It would require 4 mammoth retaining walls to hold it up, and over 1.5 million square feet of space to be filled with earth. The finished temple complex was so big that today you could fit 20 football fields inside it. Herod's temple is now gone, destroyed by the Romans, and replaced 700 years later with the iconic Dome of the Rock. But the walls that made this structure possible remain standing to this day.
This is a wall that's more than 10 stories high. You know, it's like 20 feet or more thick. And then every single stone has been laid absolutely perfectly. So you realize that what you're seeing is an absolute work of art.
Steve wants to discover its secrets. How were the walls built so well that they survived 2,000 years? Was it by luck or design? Just how good were these ancient builders? State-of-the-art laser scanners might just hold the key to finding this out. At the controls is a world-class team from the University of Arkansas. Katie Simon, Adam Barnes, and Malcolm Williamson from the Center for Advanced Spatial Technologies.
I think this will unlock some secrets for us. It's going to give us a perspective that you really cannot get with any other means.
The plan is for Malcolm to do a long-range scan and produce an overview of the structure, while Katie and Adam cover the base of the walls with a higher resolution scan. The team hopes the very stones themselves will give vital clues to the wall's survival. And it's not long before the data comes pouring in. Incredibly accurate individual scans, each one containing millions of points of reference. The scanner captures everything, even the passing cars. The task for the team is to cover the whole area of the wall and then piece together the results into an analysis model. Meanwhile, Steve goes in for a closer look. He wants to discover more about the forces of nature the walls have withstood over their long life. And he's startled to discover just how close the walls have come to being destroyed.
So here's an interesting part of the wall. The stress history of the wall written on its surface. So what we can see here are some huge shear cracks in the walls. And these shear cracks have been caused by massive forces. I think it could be seismic forces, because the way an earthquake hits is there are 2 types of waves. The first one is the P wave. That comes fast, that arrives first. And it hits the wall like a train. It's like something bashing into it like a very large force. But then it's over. The second force is the S wave. The S wave is very much like an ocean. It's a long wavelength wave that pushes things up and down. And what we can see here is from these cracks is that some of the stones have been held down while the other half of the stone has been lifted up. And that massive force has ripped these 5-ton stones in half. And you can see the damage they've done all the way down the wall.
In fact, since its creation, multiple major earthquakes have hit the walls of the Temple Mount, with the Bible itself describing one as so powerful it shook the earth and split rocks. It's incredible this vast structure has survived such devastation for 2,000 years. So how has it survived so long? The team's investigation is shedding light onto this very question. This is Tech HQ. With the scan data starting to arrive, Steve and the team can begin knitting it together to transform the bricks of the Temple Mount into an amazingly accurate 3D model.
That's terrific.
There's a lot of
Really
data there.
good.
We can look at the cracks between the rocks and start to see where some of the features on the stones are.
Yeah, so these are the pieces we want to focus in on.
Using the scans, the team can see minute details and measure precisely just how good the ancient builders really were. And Steve has noticed from the scans something unusual about the walls. Rather than being constructed perfectly vertical, they instead appear to be out of alignment.
Well, here we are, you can see the details of the stones. You can see that these stones are sticking out quite a bit more.
Down at the bottom.
From the top to the bottom of the wall, the data has shown how the stones are not aligned. Steve thinks rather than this being a mistake, it is in fact the first clue to the wall's remarkable longevity. With the laser scan, he can measure the edge of the wall. They are actually set back at a 12-degree angle. Steve thinks this may be a deliberate engineering choice. It pushes the weight of the wall backwards to better resist the vast weight of material inside the Temple Mount. A clever design technique to increase structural strength.
Well, what they did is they actually built the stone, so each stone was laid with the next stone above set
Slope,
back.
yeah.
Each course is set
Right.
back 2 or 3 inches. Then the forces get transmitted very well through the structure. So if you build it well, it lasts longer.
Herod was using clever techniques borrowed from the ancient Greeks to deliberately build his walls to have extra levels of strength and stability. But how much further could Herod push the limits of engineering? To find out, the time scanners need to explore this ancient structure in much greater detail if they are to unlock the real building mastery of King Herod the Great. For 2,000 years, the walls of the Temple Mount have withstood successive attacks by Romans, Arab armies, and Crusaders alike, not to mention major earthquakes. But how much of their survival is down to luck, and how much to design? The team needs to scan the entire wall to know for sure. Steve and the team have now studied the eastern and southern walls. However, for the most accurate data, they need to scan the best preserved area of the wall, its western side. But it's never been scanned before, because this area is the most religious place on the planet for Jews. It's often known as the Wailing Wall.
I've never been here before, but I'm aware of the significance of it. But we do need the information to help us decode the complex. So I'm really looking forward to what we're going to find.
This is a hugely sensitive site, but the Guardians of the Wall have given our team a few hours of special access to gather the data we need. With the wall stretching over such a large area, it's an incredibly tight time frame.
This is amazing. We never thought
Yeah.
we'd get to be here. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's a great vantage point for the wall. This is about as good as I could ever expect.
As the scanning begins, Dallas takes a closer look at this most holy of places.
This is the Western Wall, sometimes called the Wailing Wall, and thousands of Jews from all over the world come here to pray. You can see all these little bits of paper. This is where people write their prayers down and push them deep into the cracks.
It's called the Wailing Wall because for centuries, Jews have gathered here to chant and pray at its base, lamenting the loss of the once great Jewish temple that stood here. This is the most sacred place in Judaism.
These stones are just soaked in so much human history. It's going to be fascinating to see what other stories our technology will be able to reveal.
The scanners gather crucial data during this brief, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But what they see here is not the complete picture, because it's come to light that what can be seen above ground is only half the story. Excavations revealed a hidden part of the wall, which continues downwards, far below modern ground level, to the original streets of Jerusalem, and the site of incredible evidence of Herod the Great's building ambition.
Look at this. God almighty. Just look at the size of these stones.
A single giant stone, over 13 feet high and almost 46 feet long, placed here by Herod's men 2,000 years ago.
So this is where this rock starts, here. This is one solid piece of stone, all the way along here. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going to here.
Cut from a single piece of rock, it's as long as 5 cars laid end to end. This giant stone may hold one of the keys to understanding the incredible construction of Herod's Temple Mount.
Moving something like this from a quarry to this location, it's hard to imagine the human endeavor that's involved in doing that. I mean, even today, I don't even know if we have cranes that could move something of this weight. Be interesting to calculate what it actually weighs. You know, incredible that they move this just by human strength or with animals. You know, I just can't even imagine how they did it. And it also seems to have been built with such precision. You know, we should scan this, see if it's vertical and see if the joints are horizontal, because not only is it incredibly large, but you know, it's been built accurately. Absolutely amazing piece of engineering.
Steve asks Adam and Malcolm to come down to analyze this finding, hoping it may reveal secrets to the successful survival of these ancient walls. While their lasers scan the giant stone, the team wants to know where such vast pieces of rock could have come from. So Dallas has tracked down archaeologist Guy Stiebel. They're taking a step back in time to discover how these walls were made.
Oh, cool.
Here we go. Now for the back. Good. We're actually walking in the footsteps of workers that lived here 2,000 years ago.
Keeps going, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is huge.
An archaeological trail has led to this point, a place that Guy says holds the key to the giant walls of Jerusalem.
Okay, there you go.
Wow, this is unbelievable.
Look how fresh it is. I mean, it is as if those blocks were carved yesterday.
Well, it's completely protected from the elements, isn't it? So, look at that, those chisel
You
marks.
can see the chisel marks, you can see those channels.
Yep.
What lies hidden down here is one of King Herod's stone quarries. Deep underground, there is a layer of unique limestone rock that was ideal for building and key to Herod's construction plans. His engineers carved tens of thousands of giant stones from these very walls, leaving behind a complex of tunnels and caves.
How long would it have taken to get one of those out? How many people would it have taken?
Actually, 2 men within something like 15 minutes can produce such a
15 minutes?
15 minutes. If you train.
How on earth can you do that in 15 minutes? They don't have any mechanical tools here. This is just with
Speak about hammers, huge hammers,
15 minutes?
sledgehammers and iron pangs, and that's it. By knowing the stone, knowing where one is able to take a large block.
This is the ancient version of a building production line. Rather than diggers and excavators, Herod's men used hand tools and muscle to remove and transport rock on an unprecedented scale. For the larger rocks, some of which weighed many hundreds of tons, rather than trying to drag or carry them, Herod's men used them as axles. By attaching giant wheels to either side, they simply rolled them back to Jerusalem. Back at the Temple Mount, the team now knows how these massive stones were quarried and transported to the building site. But it's a mystery how this epic monument was then constructed with just people power. Here, Steve's expert eye is beginning to decipher the vital clues to the puzzle.
The first thing that strikes you is just the size of these stones. I mean, they're all huge. I mean, typical stone like this one, it's about 6 feet long, 3 feet high, and we're not sure how thick, but it's got to weigh at least 5 tons. So massive pieces of stone. So the first thing that strikes me is how did they lift them and place them?
Herod's engineers employed cranes, remarkably similar to ones in use on modern-day construction sites. But these ones were powered by manpower alone. Huge wheels would be rotated by men inside them, and this power would be used to lift rocks into place with a pulley system. But how did they then move these stones into the correct position?
Let's just see if we can get a good place to see. Can you see it? Can you see that the stone ends and there's something in the joint? The horizontal joints are all filled. Pretty well everywhere you can see the horizontal joint is filled. So I think what they did was, the way they built this was they lifted these stones up in place and then slid them across this joint. And what we can see in here is some material that allowed them to break the friction to allow the rocks to slide over each other.
Steve thinks that sliding the blocks helped these ancient engineers to position vast stones weighing hundreds of tons with perfect accuracy.
They're 5 tons and very difficult to move in position without some sort of system that could help you.
Steve now understands the scale and ambition needed to build Herod's walls. But he hasn't yet learned the secrets to their longevity. Back in Tech HQ, the team puts the scans together. Steve hopes this will reveal how the walls of the Temple Mount have survived for so long. He believes the answer begins with the core size of the building stones. He thinks the size of these blocks may be crucial to the structure of the walls, the most impressive being the single giant stone underground. The computerized data, when added to estimates of its depth, can reveal the stone's volume, which allows Steve to calculate its weight.
So what we have there is the volume, and of course to convert that to the actual weight, we need to multiply it by the density. So stone like this has a density of about 2.4 tons a cubic meters. So if you actually get the weight in tons of the rock as it exists. See it more.
And the results are awe-inspiring. The calculations suggest the giant stone weighs 301 tons.
It's huge. It's over 300 tons.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So you start to realize the sort of scale of this thing.
Well, how much does your average car weigh? I mean, if you think about it in terms of,
maybe 2 tons.
Okay, so
150 cars stacked up one on top of the other.
in one solid
One
lump.
piece of stone. Yeah, moved at the same time.
Using such gigantic blocks gives great reward, but also great risk. Their vast weight adds strength to the walls, but if not placed with perfect symmetry, could also spell disaster. One miscalculation of these immense forces could bring the whole wall crashing down.
I think we want to see how flat are those joints, because that is fundamentally important to how they built it.
For walls built on such a scale, having survived earthquakes and the test of time, Steve believes it would require a margin of acceptable error of just a few inches. Could the ancient engineers have achieved such a feat with only muscle power and eyesight? Steve is hoping the laser scans will answer this as he takes precise measurements of the stones.
We're going to measure the elevation. 23.787 meters on the right.
Yeah.
And on the left. $23.799.
Oh my God. Can you believe how close that is?
Over the whole length of the wall, there is only half an inch of difference between the height at one end and the other.
So that's half an inch in 135 feet. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
The walls aren't just moderately level, they are made with staggering accuracy. The ancient builders have managed to get them almost perfectly level along this entire section.
could we build
Yeah.
stones of that size to that level of accuracy today? It would be a big ask.
These are stones that are cut by hand. These are not machine-cut stones. This is just using what you got up there and what you've got here.
And you've also got to remember they've been there for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
They've gone through earthquakes.
That's
The
amazing.
ground settled.
That's amazing.
They've been worn out by time. So this is
That's
absolutely
ridiculous.
fantastic.
That's ridiculous.
The scans have shown the secret of the wall's survival lies in the astonishing accuracy of the ancient builders, which even goes beyond most modern engineering. This allowed Herod to build walls with enormous stones of fantastic strength that meant they could survive against earthquakes and the rages of time for over 2 millennia. But the story of King Herod the Great, this master builder, doesn't stop there.
We've seen plenty of evidence of the scale of Herod's ambition in these walls, but if you really want to get a sense of the man, if you want to understand just what he was capable of, we need to leave Jerusalem altogether and venture even deeper into the Holy Land.
Herod was a man obsessed with building to impress, constructing the vast walls of the Temple Mount to flatten a mountaintop. But just leveling a mountain wasn't the limit of his ambition. He had a much bigger desire: to build his own mountain. 10 miles south of the holy city of Jerusalem is Herodium. It's in the West Bank, a place of conflict and sensitivity, a land whose ownership has been fought over for decades. Much of it is barren desert, untouched for thousands of years. But it's also the site of an amazing feat of Herod's building genius.
Is that it? Oh my God, that's actually pretty cool. Okay. You might be able to have a look out the window, you might be able to see it. It almost looks like Devil's Tower in Wyoming if you've ever seen Close Encounters. We've left Jerusalem heading into the West Bank, and there it is. That's Herodium, this palace, this fortress that Herod built for himself. So we're going to go and have a closer look at it now to see if we can understand a little bit more about the man.
This was a new milestone in Herod's building legacy, because here at Herodium, Herod decided to build himself a mountain. It may not look like more than a hill now, but appearances can be deceptive. This mountain was made by man, and the remains of the incredible palace that once stood atop it are still there. It's a vast construction, bigger than any of the pyramids. It was built by hand 2,000 years ago and transformed the very landscape of the Holy Land.
Well, first impression is this thing is absolutely huge. I mean, you don't see mountains like that made by men anywhere on Earth.
But Herod's mountain is only half the story. Hidden inside it is the amazing key to the mountain's purpose. And for the first time ever, the team is going to be allowed to laser scan it.
Wow. It's pretty big. It's pretty impressive.
On top of this mountain is a palace fort. Historical references allow us to reconstruct this palace of opulence and magnificence, built by Herod to stand as a beacon to his wealth and power. Formerly 5 stories high, with vast towers, bathhouses, and lavish palace rooms, it even had a tropical garden. Herod literally moved mountains to build the palace of his dreams.
This is a marvelous archaeological site. I've not seen many things like this. This is first class, and it's going to be a real adventure scanning this, I think.
By bringing the scanning technology here, Steve hopes to understand the engineering enigmas behind the building of Herod's palace. There are 2 big questions he wants answers to.
Number one is, how did they build a mountain at that angle on the top of that hill? And number two is how did they deliver water to it every single day of the year?
This was an amazing feat because the palace was built in the middle of the desert. It's something that has baffled archaeologists for years.
This site's been excavated for decades and already it's given up lots of secrets, including the tomb of Herod himself. But hopefully, over the next few days, we'll be able to reveal a whole lot more.
Herod built his fortress in the middle of the desert because it was here that he won the pivotal battle of his career. Wanting a fitting tribute to his victory, he came up with the idea of Herodium. Vast amounts of earth were loaded onto an existing hill to create an engineered mountain that seems to stand at an impossible angle. Roman writer Josephus described the site as a hill raised to a greater height by the hand of man. He built a fortress on top which has long since disappeared, but the mountain which was formed to hold it still dominates the skyline. With the team's unique scanning technology, Steve wants to find out how Herod could have built such an ambitious construction. He wants to create a full laser model of the mountain to discover its secrets, a huge task for the scanning technicians.
Just setting up the scan to do a 360 scan, so I'm going to get most of the mound, I'm going to get part of the surrounding hill, and Steve's looking at some features that are here at the base of the mound. I've set up the scan so that we get sufficient resolution in those areas so that we can maybe look for some of these features that he's talking about. Hopefully our data can help answer some questions somehow.
Steve is granted special access to the site. He wants to get an understanding of the smaller, hidden secrets behind Herod's ancient engineering.
What we can see here is how the mountain was actually engineered. If you look over here, you can see there are a series of layers, big rocks interspersed with small stones. What has happened here is they didn't just place the material against the mountain, they thought about it. They sorted the rock out into different sizes, and they used the very big pieces in one layer and the very fine material in another layer, and they compacted it. This is called engineered soil. The reason they do this is it makes it much stronger and it behaves much better. If you can imagine that when you build a sandcastle, if you compress it, the sand becomes very hard. And they're trying to do much the same thing. They're trying to compress the material and make it much stronger so that it can stand up at this very steep angle against the mountain. Look what I've found over here. These huge pieces of wood have been found all over the mountain, connected into the existing walls. So I've been told that these huge pieces of wood are part of an earthquake resistance system for Herod's fortress. However, I don't believe that. Because these have been found all over the mountain, and they're actually generally embedded into the walls solidly, what they were for was to join the new material, the engineered mountain that went on top of the original hill, to join it together. In that joint, that is the place where the slip is going to take place. The material is going to try and slide down the hill. And what the Romans did, much like we do today, is to connect these two things together. So this is called shear resistance. It's a means of actually stitching the new mountain into the old mountain. And it's the reason why all of this material is able to stand so vertical without falling down into the valley below.
While Steve now better understands the techniques Herod's men employed, the team still needs the scans to help investigate the bigger question of how such a vast structure was formed. As the scanners work hard to collect this data, Dallas has a chance to investigate the scale of the fortress ruins. Most of the building has long gone, but the remains hint at what used to be.
As well as being a brilliant strategic fortress, it was also a place of great opulence. So in essence, it was the ultimate penthouse. Come with me. This is your bathhouse. And you see this incredible dome. That's the Israeli military flying overhead. Still in really, really good shape. Come with me. I'll show you your living quarters. This would be your living room. And behind that wall, you've got more living quarters. And just to show you how opulent it would have been, look at the detail on some of these pillar bases here and some exquisite carving, absolutely fantastic. And down here, all of this area, this would be a garden and a courtyard. You would have had plants here, a wonderful outdoor space.
But even the grandness of the palace itself would have been overshadowed by the scale of the mountain Herod created to build it on. So just how did he create this mountain?
So the engineering problem that we've got here is that Herod wanted to create a mountain. How did he do that? So that opens up a number of engineering problems. The first is, where did he get the material from? And the second one is, how did he actually do it? So the current theory is that the material was taken off the top of that and placed on that one. But I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe it is that that's a very difficult thing to do in engineering terms. I mean, why would you take material, take it all the way downhill and lift it all the way up again? That's a huge amount of work.
With Steve's engineering experience and the data from the laser scanners, the team is hoping to shed new light on this question.
We've come to the end of a pretty frantic couple of days here. Malcolm, Katie and Adam have been scanning full speed ahead. All we need to do now is get all that data back and piece it together, and hopefully we'll be able to reveal a little bit more about this incredible mountain.
And the results are in.
It does just look like a volcano, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Even more so from here.
Yeah.
The fact that we can now zoom around and fly around and look at angles.
This view allows Steve to challenge the existing idea of how Herodium was constructed.
I mean, you can see how steep the slope is. I sort of think that the two peaks, this hill and the original hill here, were originally connected. And what has been done is that this valley has been excavated, and that has made the mountain stand by itself.
Steve has formed a remarkable theory as to how the mountain was made. Rather than the well-established idea of moving tons of earth from a neighboring hill, he believes that it was actually one long, low hill from which Herod dug a valley and used the earth from this to create his mountain.
If you're going to build a mountain and you've got a hill and you're going to put the mountain on top of the hill, you're going to say, where am I going to get the material from? And started to look closer on the ground. I could see rock outcropping that just didn't look natural. And I just sort of cast my eye around. And then in my imagination, I started to see the original landscape and how they'd actually made this single mountain stand by itself.
For Steve, the scan data has cast new light on the construction of Herodium. Through exceptional engineering, Herod could build his vast mountain from simply deconstructing the surrounding landscape. But the very landscape that built Herodium was also its enemy. A palace is only good if you can live there. And in the deserts of ancient Judea, only one precious commodity mattered: water. How did Herod ensure that Herodium would get the water it needed to survive? The clue to this can be found underneath the palace floor. And Steve wants the team to use its scanners to investigate.
We went down these steps and down these tunnels, and we sort of wandered around. So we were on a sort of voyage of discovery to get inside the mountain.
These tunnels lead deep underground, many feet below the floor of the palace. Steve is taking Dallas to search for the right place for the scanners to analyze in detail how Herod could find water in the middle of the desert.
Ooh, look at this. Look at this.
This is all waterproofing.
So it's just a big water tank.
It is a big water tank.
Have a look at this, Steve, look at this.
These vast caves are hand-carved from the solid rock of the mountainside and the waterproof render on them suggests to Steve that they are designed to capture and store water.
It's huge, isn't it?
Well, look at the depth.
It's huge, my God, look.
There's many thousands of gallons of water held in here continuously.
So you reckon this is just a big system,
Yeah.
essentially?
Herod's men used the best in ancient engineering techniques to create these giant stores. Having mined the spaces from the rock, they would then coat them with a special plaster that would waterproof the natural rock.
So do you think there would have been water up here to the actual ceiling?
Well, they've waterproofed even at the highest point, so I think they've designed it to be completely full. There's probably somewhere where the water can overflow so that the pressure doesn't build up.
It's huge, this, isn't it? But the thing is, if you're living in the desert, you're going to need a lot of water, particularly if you're a palace. You want to water your lawns and make it all look nice, not just for drinking.
And the baths and all of those
Absolutely,
things. So,
totally.
continually need a supply of water.
Herodium's cisterns are a real engineering feat. Hewn from solid rock, they would have been the lifeblood of the palace. But how did Herod actually get water to these cisterns? And how, in an area where it only rains around 4 inches a year, did he manage to fill such vast spaces? Steve sends the team to scan the entire length of these tunnels. Hopefully the data will help him to deconstruct the site.
They did a remarkable job because we could join together the scans on the top looking into the fortress with the scans on the outside of the mountain and get this complete sort of 3D visualization.
Steve assembles the team in Tech HQ to analyze the scans.
So you can see the data here inside of the mountain.
Here, the scale of the cisterns comes to light. What's been excavated so far could hold enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
It's almost like an X-ray of the mountain. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's exactly what it is.
Hopefully, this new perspective can shed light on Steve's key question of how Herod managed to fill such vast areas with fresh water.
One thing you can see from that is just how low down the mountain these chambers are.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think, why is that?
Yeah.
The stunning ability of the 3D technology to combine the inside and outside scans reveals for the first time exactly where the cisterns sit in the mountain, allowing Steve to analyze the key to their construction. Steve thinks the reason it was so low is that it was designed as a reservoir to collect any rainwater that fell over the whole area of the mountain. And that water would have been collected throughout all the years of the construction of Herodium.
I think the first job was to build the cisterns, and then what they will have done is collected the water runoff off the mountain, so they've created a big catchment area for lots of water.
And amazingly, Herod didn't just build one cistern. Archaeologists have discovered 4 of them and believe there could be 8 more within the bed of the mountain. Millions of gallons of fresh water available all year round in the middle of the desert.
Such that on the day that Herod actually moves in, there's
Yeah,
plenty of water. There's enough water for the bathing. There's separate cisterns probably for the drinking, but this water would be in for everyday use in the gardens and things like that. Yeah, I've started to feel we've sort of started to get under Herod's skin.
Yeah.
And actually start to see how his mind is
Yeah,
working.
exactly, yeah.
The scans have shown Steve how this mountain could support Herod during his lifetime. But there is a second side to the story of Herodium, because it was here that Herod was buried. In 2007, after decades of searching, archaeologists found Herod's tomb built alongside the mountain. What does Herod's tomb itself have to say about his building ambitions?
Herod was obsessed with drama and scale, but ironically, the mausoleum that he built for himself, it only stood for 70 years before it was dismantled and smashed, along with what is thought to be his sarcophagus. This is almost a complete reconstruction of what they think is Herod's sarcophagus. You can see the actual original bits, but when they found it, it was completely smashed into thousands and thousands of parts, which perhaps says a lot about what people thought of Herod.
But Herod's tomb isn't the only thing that the archaeologists found. It was during this excavation that a remarkable mystery was uncovered. Archaeologist Orrin Gutfeldt is taking Dallas to investigate the secrets revealed beneath the mountainside.
After we enlarged the area of the excavation, we noticed that there are many structures that was built by Herod the Great beneath. So we continued the excavations and we uncovered more and more earlier structures like bathhouse, storehouses, even a theater.
Remarkably, what Orrin and the archaeologists have discovered was an ornate theater, reception room, and luxurious bathhouse, all made by Herod, but mysteriously preserved in perfect condition, buried under thousands of tons of rubble. Now, for the first time in 2,000 years, Orrin's dig has brought some of these buildings to the surface.
Oh, look at this. Wow, look at these beautiful frescoes. I mean, it's damaged, but there's still quite a lot intact. The colours are still really vibrant. This is the first sort of colour I've seen since I've been here. It's really nice to see colour. Okay, so this whole room would have been filled with dirt.
That's correct.
What is this room and why is it so well preserved?
This is the royal chamber of the theater, the private theater that Herod built for himself.
The room looked down onto the now excavated theater below. It's a private royal box that was lavishly decorated.
As you can see, it's fresco, wall painting that was painted on humid plaster.
The pictures up here are actually quite detailed.
It's a decoration of windows. You can see that it's illusion of a window. It's not a real window.
Are they sort of wooden shutters, or the illusion of wooden shutters that are open? And I'm trying to make out the scene. I can see it looks like a sea scene or a lake.
That's correct. This is a marine scene, and actually there's a boat in the horizon and some island with the trees.
So how did these opulent buildings end up being buried? Was it an earthquake or landslide? What could cause such mass destruction, but also leave the walls in such good condition? To shed light on what happened here 2,000 years ago, Malcolm and Adam need to scan the fresco room in detail. They can then feed their data back to Tech HQ.
Could we cut a section through the ground and through the theatre?
Yeah.
The 3D laser scans allow Katie to actually slice into the mountainside.
Do you want to go into the fresco room?
Yeah.
Because of its incredible accuracy, the laser scan allows the team to zoom inside the recently discovered buildings. And Steve is fascinated by an idea given to him by Orrin Gutfeldt. The roof of the fresco room seems to have actually been cut rather than crushed, sliced at a deliberate angle. And when the scan pulls back, the data shows that a single line of demolition runs all the way up the mountainside.
Look how steep this engineered material is standing. And then you can see how it cuts through the walls.
Yeah, straight down on the same angle, straight through the wall, boom, 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 all the way down.
The scans confirm for Steve something the archaeologists suspect. The burying of the buildings wasn't an act of nature. To be such a definite angle, in perfect line with the hillside, suggests only one thing. It was a deliberate, man-made act.
The theatre is so beautifully constructed.
Yeah.
The fresco room is so beautifully constructed. And the idea of just burying it just seems ridiculous. It just seems such an extraordinary step to do.
So who was it who did this, and why? Remarkably, all evidence points to it being King Herod himself.
It's the man, isn't it? He's built this magnificent fortress on the top of a mountain. He's built his own theatre.
Yeah.
He's built all of his own spaces, and then he just throws them away and buries them.
As Herod neared the end of his life, the theory is that he was trying to construct somewhere magnificent to mark his death, a grand mausoleum, transforming the mountain of Herodium into an immaculate, smooth-sided monument to himself.
At some point in everybody's life, they start thinking about, the fact that everybody's going to die. He started to think about where he wanted to be buried. And the idea of this is that everybody will always see this mountain, and that would be your memory. So I could see the logic in the man. It's just that who else could have that scale of idea. Such a great place to be your resting place.
It's a remarkable discovery and a startling theory that has been backed up with archaeological evidence from the site. King Herod was so obsessed with his mountain being seen as a perfect monument to himself, he ordered even the most opulent of buildings to be buried, so that nothing could distract from the magnificence of his mausoleum.
One of the things that amazes me is that, we see people climbing mountains, but here's somebody who's actually built a mountain. They were given this brief by Herod, this crazy idea, and they actually made it happen through the science and knowledge and capability and skill, and it's lasted 2,000 years. As somebody who builds buildings, one of the great things, one of the things that gets you most excited about the job is that you build something that's a legacy, and what better legacy than this?
Herod the Great, a true genius of the ancient building world. Steve's engineering insight and the team's special scanners have cast new light upon his amazing building achievements, from carving and maneuvering 300-ton rocks by hand to building the vast, almost indestructible walls of the Temple Mount.
Every individual stone is perfect. It's been perfectly finished and perfectly laid.
To changing the very landscape itself to create mountains from the desert sand. His ambition and vision led to creations that rival anything ever built. With their unique technology and skill, the time scanners have managed to view these incredible creations in a brand new way.
Who else could have that scale of idea? I don't know anybody else on Earth who has built a mountain.
What we've come to understand being here is that it's Herod's engineering legacy more than anything else that defines him, because not only did these structures enthrall the ancient world, but they have set a benchmark as to what's possible even today.
Time Scanners, Jerusalem is available on DVD. To order, visit shoppbs.org or call 1-800-PLAY-PBS.